Hi, my name's John Jordan. I teach at Penn State University Smeal College of Business, and I work with the Institute for Business Markets. I'm here today to talk a little bit about a survey we're doing of business-to-business websites and give you a sense of what we're seeing in the state of the field for 2016. Just a quick background, we did 100 sites, surveyed them in February 16, and looked at about 16 industries, not inclusively, and that's one of the things we're growing later this year as we go to about 250 to 300 companies. And we're measuring 25 variables per site and finding some very surprising results. If you look at the research, it suggests in 2010 that 57% of the buyer journey is complete before the buyer talks to the seller. And sellers aren't really adjusting to that. And we're seeing lots of artifacts of that lack of adjustment in website design and practice. The audience for corporate websites is not always the customer. Many times it was the financial and investor communities. And I think there are consequences of that, and we'll talk about those down the road. There's a wide variation in what the sites feature, and it's not always explained by the industry. Some sites in some industries are very feature-rich, and a direct competitor has very little in the same functionality. Other times, there's a very close alignment across an industry, and all the sites look and feel very, very similar. My colleague Ralph Oliva asked, is there a customer value proposition? And on only 40% of slides was one evident. Most of the time, we couldn't tell why we as buyers should buy from these people. So I think there's a huge opportunity there to improve that communication. Given that we're in the age of e-commerce and e-business, it's a little bit of a surprise that you really couldn't do a lot of commerce on most B2B sites. Now, there's an asterisk here, and that's that we could not get behind the sign-in screen, and so we don't know what the functionality is available to people who are login customers. The one thing you can buy on many, many sites is branded merchandise, little race cars, T-shirts, baseball caps, and this was an interesting trend that we observed. Some statistics, 85% of the sites in the sample used videos, 65% were mobile friendly, only 12% had apps, although I must say that the apps that I did see, some of them were very, very, very good, very well done, very handy, very useful to their customers. Excellent work. 75% of sites linked to Twitter feeds, and of those 75%, 93% were current. So very few zombie social media feeds. That was an encouraging finding. Only 40% had email opt-in for newsletters. This is a shocking finding. If you look at the research, when customers give you voluntarily an email address, the ROI for communications through that channel are the best of any digital communication channel, and better than paper, better than sales calls, better than search results, and yet only 40% gave me the opportunity to give them my email for further contact. Only 13% had live chat as a contact option. I think this is going to grow rapidly in the next few years as the demographics change, that millennials don't like talking on the phone, and the default for call your rep is going to be less and less viable as an option as these millennials become more powerful buyers. One of the major themes in our research is that every business is now a content business. It's not just Disney, it's not just Viacom. It really is a matter of communicating what you do, what it's worth, why it matters, what can go wrong, what its uses are. Innovative companies especially have this challenge. What's new? How do you use it? How do you get the information to both the sales force and to the buyer community? Content management then was one of our focus areas, and unfortunately PDF product catalogs are still very common. Sometimes the whole big lot, hundreds of megabytes, big download, nothing you're ever going to watch on your phone. So there's room for improvement there. Material safety data sheets and similar documentation are frequently available. This is very low-hanging fruit that was harvested by many, many companies. It's rare to see training videos in terms of how do I use this complicated artifact? What are the applications? What are the use cases, how do I clean it up? And there's big opportunity there. Configurators, which would be an application showing me how do I find the right part for this application, how do I install this part within a system. They are evident. There are some very good ones out there, but they're uncommon. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these are available as mobile phone apps. Customer case studies are very common, and they vary widely in how they're approached and how easy it is to see them on the site. Only 21% of the sites had blogs, which is, again, very low-hanging fruit, very easy way to keep content current, comment on current developments in the news, attack any sort of disinformation or misinformation in the marketplace, and only 21% of companies took that opportunity. One of the things we talk about when we talk to our member companies is there are 12 do's and don'ts that we identified from leading practices. I'm not going to go into those now for open consumption, but rest assured that there are some very powerful lessons in that set of insights. Going forward, companies can identify several areas of risk with regard to their digital presence. We observed a wide variation in site functionality, and sometimes this didn't really matter, sometimes it did. In some situations, though, competitors are able to gain separation from you at very low cost. And so this gives them an opportunity to solve customers' problems more quickly, easier, with better solutions. And if people are still downloading paper catalogs from you, that can be a big disadvantage. As I mentioned earlier, the customer value propositions were missing in most cases. Many sites, I'd say the majority, going anecdotally, I have to double check the numbers, looked like they were done by committees. And it was obvious that they were done by committees because they talked about the same thing in different ways in different places. They allowed redundancy and big opportunity there to alienate and confuse your customer base by this inconsistency. Finally, there's a risk that the mobile demographic wants content its ways. And that means not necessarily talking to a rep. That means not big PDF product catalog downloads. That means social media. And missing out on that channel, I think, will have consequences in the next 5 to 10 years, as I said, as these millennials grow into product buyers and specifiers. A lot of opportunities. We're seeing that digital business is expanding into things like the Internet of Things, sensors, actuators, chips all over the place in a lot of business-to-business scenarios. Branding and value propositions, that's table stakes, isn't it? Just like who are you, what do you stand for? And if your web presence and your mobile presence don't convey that, where are people going to find out about you? Digital tools, including those configurators, are the price of entry in a lot of these markets. I think quality apps and quality content are going to more frequently become the default. And call your rep, look at the catalog, place your order using the catalog number will become less and less attractive to the new generation of buyers. Finally, B2B video is not remotely utilized as powerfully as it can be. Many companies have a very glossy corporate overview video of about 3 to 6 minutes. Many of them have soaring eagles and pretty images and lots of symbolism, but very few hard facts. One great exception to this was Bobcat, the people who make the small skid steer loaders. They had lots of videos doing product comparisons head-to-head with their competitors and say, here's drilling a hole, here's dragging a log, here's scooping a mound of gravel, here's how fast ours does it, here's the turning radius of our loader versus the competitor's loader. Very, very useful, powerful stuff. Very seldom did we see that. The opportunity, how can you make it easier to do business with you? It seems like a common sense question. Next steps for people looking to improve their digital presence. What is your site flow and what is this new funnel where people have the vast majority of their research and consideration done before they contact you. And so if they're coming in really ready to buy or with very detailed product questions, how do you accommodate that as opposed to call a rep or send us your email, we'll get back to you later. It's easy to audit your website versus your peers. It's easy to include the mobile presence, and there are a lot of rogue apps being built by many, many companies where divisions get out ahead of corporate, and yet it's globally available in the App Store or in the Android App Store. Where can you get content wins that make sense for your market? Whether this is digital, whether this is product data sheets, whether this is social media. This is going to vary by your company, by your offer, by your sales channel, and there's no one-size-fits-all, but there are many content wins to be had out there. One big opportunity is to integrate digital marketing with your other initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, very few web presences talked about trade shows. Social media can be integrated with the sales channel. Pricing, obviously, has a lot to do with digital marketing. So we see many opportunities for companies to communicate better across their silos. And again, the website shows those silos pretty vividly. Finally, what are you measuring? You can measure a lot of things. You can't measure everything, and not everything counts. So in your situation, what can you measure, and then track those and be serious about it. That should do it. I hope you get a taste of the research, and we're very interested in talking with you further about where you might fit into this work and further opportunities for collaboration. And we will also have further insights in Q3 as we get into the second batch of the research, and hope that you'll contact us if you're interested in further results. Thank you.